What's up, everybody? It's the Digital World Podcast, and I'm gonna start with this. Now, you may ask me, why do you keep talking about the private ledger? Why is it so important? It is unbelievably important. Now, ever since we first learned that Ripple had a private ledger for these central banks to launch their CBDCs, it was like a big eye opener. Now, this is huge. What we're seeing right now is that all these central banks are coming out and saying and talking about their CBDCs. This is not something new that's been started. If anything, this has been taking place for multiple years. But it's only recently that we were made aware that there was a private ledger for central banks to launch their CBDCs. And this is very important. We see here that the central bank said we have decided to launch a project to prepare for possibly issuing a digital euro. We will look at how a digital euro could be designed and distributed to everyone in the euro area, as well as the impact it would have. Our experimental work has already showed us to identify possible ways to protect privacy. It has also shown that the energy needs of the infrastructure would be negligible compared with the energy consumption and environmental footprint of crypto assets such as Bitcoin. A digital euro will be successful if it adds value for people, merchants, and financial intermediaries in the euro area. Okay, and so this is happening. And here, if you want to read the white paper, you can go ahead and look at it here. And this is important because it's happening and it's picking up steam. And people say, Christine Lagarde says they're entering the investigation phase. And I talked about this in my video last night. They say it's 5-10 years out, or 5 years to implement CBDCs, 10 years to have a fully mature market. But I want you to ask yourself the question, with the current state of the economy worldwide, not just here in the US, worldwide, with all the supply chain breakdowns, with everything, with the climate change agenda that's going on, how long do you really think that things are really 5 to 10 years out? I want you to ask yourself that question. Now, I'm not making a statement by asking that. I want you to really ask yourself if it's really 5 to 10 years out. With everything that's happening, you don't think there's going to come a moment of reckoning sooner than that? It's a question. You got to ask yourself that question. Here we see Blackrock CEO Larry Fink said there's very little demand for crypto investors. Oh man, gosh. Now, this man is very smart. He knows what he's talking about. And I think that we're going to see here the demand as soon as because this lawsuit is putting things in perspective for regulators. And of course, they're not going to want to use MoneyGram's not using XRP anymore because of the lawsuit. But as soon as you see this clarity come into the space, oh, you're going to see a flood of demand. Remember, Jay Biancamono said it's going to go trickle, trickle, and then flood. And you just wait. It's been trickling and trickling, and the flood is coming. So you just wait on that. But the demand is going to skyrocket. And what do we talk about for XRP? When the demand comes, when it's needed as the lender of last resort, like Miguel Diaz said, oh man, we talked about floor price here at the minimum if we just replace Nostra accounts. But if you're talking about a lot of the money or most of the money or all the money, there's no ceiling. This is him on CNBC talking about various inflation and the Delta variant that's going on. Listen to what he has to say.
The amount of cash on the sidelines has never been greater. The amount of monetary stimulus has never been greater. The amount of fiscal stimulus has never been greater. and I was in Europe last week. I was traveling around the world 2 weeks ago. There's no question from my conversations with clients, their bigger concern is how to put their money to work, where should they put it, and how should they think about it. Specifically in Europe, Europe has been a laggard. Europe has been always slow in response. But Europe this time around versus 2008 and 2009, aggressive monetary policy, very aggressive fiscal stimulus, great deals of cash on the sidelines, and I do believe we're going to see the world rebounding economically. I was in Italy. Italy had a 9% decline in GDP in 2020. It'll take them 18 months to get back to where they were, but they're in a great trajectory. France is going to rebound the entire GDP loss of 2020 and 2021. So we're seeing different metrics. Now, there are things that I worry about. I worry about inflation. I do not believe inflation is going to be transitory, that it's going to be more systematic over time. And how the Federal Reserve and how other central banks navigate that is going to be very important. I am worried about the Delta variant, and can that slow down parts of Asia. We are seeing a real disconnect between the countries that have been very vaccinated and moving forward on vaccination and the countries that have been late in vaccination but focusing more on isolation. Isolation worked before we had a vaccination. And now, with a vaccination, these countries that were late on the vaccination are going down in isolation again. And so we are going to see this unevenness in the world today, and so I'm not trying to suggest that it's going to be a straight line upward, and there could be disappointments going forward, but overall, with the amount of fiscal stimulus and monetary stimulus, and more importantly, with the amount of cash that is looking to be put to work, and I believe the trend line is still going to be upward, maybe not as fast. Maybe it's going to be very moderate for the next 6 months as we digest how the world is able to handle the Delta variant and the speed in which vaccinations occur throughout the world. And then two, what is going to be inflation out 6 months and a year?
Now, folks, I want you to pay attention because he laid down a lot of important things. And right now, if you've seen Blockchain Backer's yesterday's video, he talked about the narrative. The narrative of inflation was the same in 2017, and it's creeping up again in 2021. And usually there's a massive bull run when that happens. Now we're talking about also the variant that's happening. Now that could be he said it could be a possible threat to the resurgence in the economy and things getting back. So be on the lookout because there could be a lot of black swan and also cyber attacks. I showed what Cyber Polygon was talking about in Klaus Schwab. So it's important to keep all these factors in consideration because those times, I mean, they're telling us about cyber attacks, so we know in the future something has to give. Now, to end this, I'm going to show this because this is a sign of many things that are coming. And this is not the first food chain restaurant that does this, but look, they basically put a note out saying that they have a shortage of staff workers. And that's sadly the reality of it. And one thing that I always think about is, well, these people who, have needs, right? They come and they work, and they're trying to do their best. So, like this sign says, try to appreciate those that did work and stuff. But this is a sign of things that are coming, folks. We're in an economic recession. Things are just starting. There's a supply chain breakdown, and eventually the consequences of those breakdowns will be shown. It just takes a little while to demonstrate itself, but it's coming. And this is something that I'm here to show you guys so you are prepared and you see things happening in real time. And it's only going to get worse. And this is not to be um, sad and depressing. It's just to help you guys see things and be prepared, because you're ahead of the curve by being in this channel. You're ahead of the curve, and that puts you at an advantage already. I hope this episode has brought you some value. Like and subscribe, comment below. What are your thoughts? As always, I like hearing from you. This is the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.